In recent months, events have begun unfolding around Apple that until recently seemed impossible even to the boldest analysts in Silicon Valley. The company, which for decades has been associated with smartphones, computers, and software, has reportedly begun a transition toward an entirely new product category that could change not only the technology market, but also the everyday lives of billions of people. The subject is Apple's first humanoid robot, and although the company officially continues to remain silent, the number of indirect signs has become so significant that many experts are already comparing what is happening to the period when Apple was secretly preparing the first iPhone. It all began with a series of reports from renowned analyst Ming-Chi Kuo, who is considered one of the most authoritative insiders in the Apple ecosystem. He was among the first to reveal that the company was actively exploring not only non-humanoid robotic systems for the home, but also full-scale humanoid platforms. At the time, many viewed this information as a long-term experiment that might never leave the laboratory stage. However, as new data began to emerge, the picture started changing rapidly. According to sources within the supply chain, Apple significantly increased budgets for divisions connected with robotics, computer vision, and artificial intelligence. Moreover, several former company employees told journalists that inside Apple, robotics is no longer viewed as a secondary research direction. On the contrary, it is beginning to take a place alongside artificial intelligence and wearable electronics on the list of strategic projects for the next decade. Analysts were especially interested in Apple's scientific publications from recent years. The company began actively publishing research focused on robot learning, spatial perception of the surrounding environment, machine interaction with the physical world, and new approaches to robotic AI. At first glance, this looked like ordinary academic activity, but specialists quickly noticed an unusual pattern. Most of these studies are ideally suited for creating a humanoid platform capable of moving through human environments, understanding the owner's commands, and performing real-world household tasks. Some experts even suggested that Apple may effectively be publishing separate elements of its future technology long before an official announcement. The situation became even more interesting after reports of major changes inside the company's robotics division. According to several industry publications, Apple underwent leadership changes in a number of research groups connected with robotics and artificial intelligence. Such personnel shifts usually occur when an experimental development moves into the stage of preparation for a commercial product. That is why many analysts began asking the question, what if Apple has already decided to create its first humanoid robot and is now gradually building a team to bring it to market? Even more intriguing are the reports coming from component suppliers. According to rumors, the company is testing new types of actuators, compact electric motors, and power systems that differ significantly from the solutions used in traditional consumer electronics. Sources claim that some of these technologies are intended for a device that must actively move through space, lift objects, interact with people, and perform physical work. When journalists attempted to find out what exact product was being discussed, most sources refused to comment, but several people hinted at a project that inside the company is considered the most ambitious since the first iPhone. According to several analytical firms, Apple is closely monitoring what is happening in the humanoid robotics market. The company is paying especially close attention to the progress of Tesla Optimus, developments from Chinese manufacturers, and research conducted by leading Japanese corporations. Apple's leadership understands perfectly well that the world is gradually approaching a moment when robots will begin appearing in people's homes on a massive scale. And if the main computing device was once the computer, followed by the smartphone, then the next step could become the personal robotic assistant. That is why the idea of creating a device that would become the physical embodiment of the Apple ecosystem is increasingly being discussed inside the company. According to sources familiar with internal corporate discussions, the future robot is being viewed not simply as a household assistant. The assumption is that it will become a full-fledged digital companion for the user. It will be able to understand context, remember the owner's preferences, accompany a person around the home, control smart devices, assist with work and learning, and perform dozens of everyday tasks. Some analysts are already calling such a concept the next iPhone moment for the entire technology industry. Interestingly, these discussions appeared almost simultaneously with Apple's major strategic restructuring in the field of artificial intelligence. After launching Apple Intelligence, the company faced extremely intense competition from OpenAI, Google, and other market players. That is why many experts believe Apple may attempt to focus on an entirely new category of devices where its strengths will become especially visible. If smartphones became the defining device of the mobile internet era, then humanoid robots could become the defining device of the artificial intelligence era. According to several insiders, one of Apple's research centers already has working prototypes of systems capable of recognizing objects, navigating through space, and interacting with the surrounding environment at almost human-like levels. Of course, this is not yet a finished product, but the very existence of such projects has generated enormous interest among investors. Some Wall Street analysts have begun suggesting that robotics could become the next multi-trillion-dollar market, where Apple attempts to repeat the success of the iPhone. The possible design of the future device also looks particularly interesting. According to sources, Apple is considering several different concepts for its appearance. These include compact home assistants with screens and wheeled platforms, as well as fully humanoid systems capable of walking on two legs. At the same time, the humanoid direction has recently been receiving increasing amounts of resources. This has led many observers to believe that the company sees long-term potential specifically in human-like robots. Against this background, rumors are increasingly emerging that Apple is forming a secret next-generation project designed to combine the company's achievements in artificial intelligence, robotics, computer vision, voice technologies, and wearable electronics. Some employees allegedly describe it as the most complex engineering challenge in the company's history. If these reports are even partially accurate, the world may be approaching the emergence of Apple's first humanoid robot, a machine capable of changing the way people imagine what a personal assistant of the future should be. As the number of leaks continued to grow, the attention of industry analysts began shifting from the question of whether Apple is working on robots to the question of how far this development has actually progressed. And this is where the most interesting details began to emerge. Several sources who had previously provided accurate information about new Apple products told journalists that the company allegedly has a separate program dedicated to creating a next-generation universal home robot. According to these sources, the project is viewed by Apple's leadership as a potential launch of the same importance as the first iPhone and could determine the company's direction for many years ahead. Particular interest was generated by reports that Apple has allegedly begun testing new generations of its own processors, specifically adapted for robotic systems. While the A-series and M-series chips were originally designed for smartphones, tablets, and computers, company engineers are reportedly now working on computing solutions capable of processing massive amounts of information from cameras, lidars, microphones, and other sensors in real time. Sources claim that the future robot must perceive the surrounding world almost the same way a human does, instantly analyzing what is happening around it and making decisions without constant connection to cloud servers. Many specialists have noted that such an approach fits perfectly with Apple's overall philosophy. The company has always aimed to move as much computing as possible directly onto the device, providing high levels of privacy and speed. That is why analysts believe Apple's future robot could perform a significant portion of its tasks locally without sending users' personal data to remote servers. This approach could become one of the product's key advantages compared with competitors. Meanwhile, new rumors surrounding the project have continued to appear. Several insiders reported that Apple is actively recruiting specialists from leading robotics companies around the world. In particular, the reports allegedly involve engineers with experience in autonomous navigation systems, industrial robots, and machine vision algorithms. According to observers, such hiring activity usually indicates that a project has entered a more serious development phase, when a company begins assembling the expertise required to prepare a product for future mass production. It is also interesting that these reports appeared at the same time as information about the expansion of Apple's research laboratories. Some sources claim that the company is investing significant resources into creating new testing facilities where robotic systems can learn how to interact with real-world objects. These are reportedly not just laboratories filled with sensors and computers, but full-scale replicas of living spaces, kitchens, living rooms, and working environments. According to insiders, such facilities allow robots to be tested in conditions that are as close as possible to real life. Against the background of these developments, some journalists began comparing the situation with the way Apple prepared the launch of the first Vision Pro. At that time, the company also worked on the technology behind closed doors for many years, and information about the actual state of the project appeared only in fragments. However, in the case of robots, the potential scale could be significantly larger. If a mixed reality headset remains a niche device for a specific audience, a robotic assistant could potentially enter almost every home. Another area of particular interest is what the artificial intelligence system of the future device might look like. According to several industry analysts, Apple is already considering the creation of its own multi-layered AI system that would be responsible not only for understanding user speech, but also for modeling physical actions. In simple terms, the robot must not only understand a person's request, but also independently determine the sequence of steps required to complete the task. If a user asks it to bring a specific object, the system would first need to locate the item, then choose a safe route, evaluate possible obstacles, and only after that perform the action. According to a number of experts, these capabilities could become the breakthrough the industry has been waiting for many years. Today, artificial intelligence is already highly effective at working with text, images, and programming, but physical interaction with the real world remains one of the most difficult challenges. That is why many believe that the company that first creates a truly useful home humanoid robot could unlock a new multi-trillion-dollar market. These discussions became especially active after rumors appeared about closed demonstrations inside Apple. According to some sources, selected company executives have already been shown experimental systems capable of performing simple household tasks without human involvement. Of course, there is no official confirmation of these reports, but the very appearance of such information has attracted enormous attention from both journalists and investors. At the same time, photos and videos began spreading on social media that some users associate with Apple's robotics projects. Most of these materials were quickly questioned, but the overall flow of such publications continued to increase. Some analysts believe that interest in the topic has reached such a high level that any new information automatically becomes the subject of intense discussion throughout the entire technology industry. The boldest predictions suggest that Apple may use its traditional approach to entering new markets. The company rarely becomes the first to enter a new device category. Instead, it observes technological development, analyzes competitors' mistakes, and then presents its own solution capable of making the product mainstream. This is what happened with smartphones, tablets, and smartwatches. Therefore, some experts believe Apple is carefully studying the successes and failures of existing humanoid robotics projects in order to eventually present its own version of a robot designed for ordinary users. Another interesting aspect is related to the company's ecosystem. Many analysts are convinced that an Apple robot would not exist separately from the brand's other devices. Instead, it would become part of a unified digital environment. Imagine a situation where your iPhone, Mac, Apple Watch, Vision Pro, and Home Robot all operate as one integrated system. The robot knows your schedule, can remind you about meetings, help with household tasks, prepare your workspace, find needed items, and even accompany you while completing various activities. This is the kind of concept that some insiders describe as the company's long-term goal. If these predictions turn out to be accurate, the consequences could be enormous. Many economists are already drawing comparisons with the revolution created by personal computers and smartphones. Once, having a computer at home was considered unusual. Later, smartphones became so common that it is difficult to imagine modern life without them. Now, some analysts are beginning to ask whether the next stage could become the era of personal robots. And if so, could Apple become one of the companies that starts this transformation? For now, there are no official announcements, but the number of indirect signs continues to grow. New research, personnel changes, supplier activity, rumors about prototypes, and growing investor interest are coming together into a picture that is convincing more and more people that Apple may truly be preparing the most ambitious project in its entire history. If even part of this information is accurate, it is entirely possible that right now, inside one of the company's closed laboratories, a device is being created that could change humanity's understanding of interaction between humans and machines within just a few years. But perhaps the loudest discussions began after the publication of several analytical reports from major investment banks, where the idea was raised for the first time that robotics could become Apple's next strategic direction after artificial intelligence. According to analysts, the smartphone market is gradually approaching maturity, while the personal robotics market has not even truly been formed yet. That is why any company capable of being the first to offer a genuinely useful solution for millions of people could gain a massive advantage for decades to come. And while such predictions once sounded too futuristic, today they are beginning to be taken much more seriously. The rumors that Apple is discussing various options for commercializing a future robot are especially interesting. Some sources claim that the company initially considered creating a relatively simple home assistant with a screen and voice interface. However, the rapid progress of artificial intelligence allegedly forced management to rethink its long-term plans. According to these reports, engineers are increasingly discussing the need to create a device capable not only of answering user questions, but also of physically interacting with the surrounding world. That is why the humanoid direction is gradually receiving more attention. According to several industry observers, a major role in this process was played by the explosive growth of interest in artificial intelligence that occurred in recent years. Leaders of technology companies are increasingly coming to the conclusion that the next step after digital AI will be its physical embodiment. If today intelligent systems exist inside smartphone and computer screens, tomorrow they may receive their own physical bodies. Many experts believe that this exact idea is now being actively discussed inside the world's largest corporations, including Apple. Against this background, new assumptions have emerged about what the company's first humanoid robot could look like. According to some analysts, Apple is unlikely to create an industrial robot for factories or warehouses. A much more logical scenario would be a device designed for ordinary users. The robot could help around the home, accompany its owner, perform simple tasks, control a smart home ecosystem, and gradually take over more and more routine activities. Essentially, this would mean the creation of a completely new type of personal device. Interestingly, such a product fits perfectly into Apple's long-term strategy, which has always focused on making technology as invisible and convenient as possible. Computers became personal. Smartphones are always with people. Smartwatches constantly remain on the wrist. The next logical step could be a personal robot that physically exists near the user and is capable of helping in the real world. That is why some analysts call robotics a natural continuation of the company's entire philosophy. Some sources even claim that Apple is already discussing scenarios that would have seemed like pure science fiction just a few years ago. For example, the robot could independently greet the owner after work, carry groceries, prepare the home before the family arrives, monitor household appliances, and perform dozens of other tasks. Of course, these remain only rumors and assumptions for now, but the very fact that such discussions are taking place shows how seriously many specialists view the potential of this technology. Some experts go even further and believe that an Apple robot could become the central element of the company's future digital ecosystem. If today the smartphone remains the main device for most people, then in 10 or 15 years, this role could be taken over by an intelligent robotic assistant. It would interact with other devices, carry out user commands, and provide access to digital services. Such a scenario sounds incredibly ambitious, but many analysts remind that similar doubts once surrounded the first smartphones as well. That is why in the technology industry, the question is increasingly not whether personal humanoid robots will appear, but who will be the first to make them truly mass market. And the more indirect signals emerge related to Apple's activity in robotics, the more people begin to suspect that the Cupertino-based company is not merely observing the development of this market from the sidelines. It is possible that right now it is preparing to launch a project that one day could be placed alongside the iPhone, iPad, and Mac. A project capable of opening an entirely new era of consumer technology and making humanoid robots as familiar a part of everyday life as smartphones are today.